there was a pilot a single engine airplane that was piloting that as they were going in towards Sky Harbor, and they had called into the airport to ask if there were any existing planes because they saw this set of lights and it looked like it was a craft, but he wasn't sure. And when they called into the tower, they reported back that there was no other planes. Well, the name of that person that was flying with his stepson Oliver, that is Kurt Russell, the actor. Art Bell talks about how the switchboard was absolutely lighting up, and the same thing for Peter Davenport, that they were getting calls left and right. So we'll have a chance to sample that.
Pat, before we jump into that call, I want to lay a little more context to March 13, 1997. The Hale-Bopp comet was circling through our solar system at that time, and it was visible to the naked eye. So during these very few months, this exact time frame, people were going out on clear nights to stare up in the sky, trying to get a glimpse of that comet. And these folks in Phoenix got more than they bargained for that night when this craft flew over the city. Most of these people were out looking for the comet, and then they see this thing.
It's a hot time in the old town tonight.
Dude, Pat, thanks for playing that. It makes me feel like we're right in the moment, man. Could you imagine being on the front lines? You know, people have seen this stuff in the sky, and who do you go to for answers? You turn on your radio and you try to get answers. You know that Coast to Coast and Art Bell, they're going to be covering this topic, and they're covering it live.
It feels like I hopped in a DeLorean and took a time machine back to that night. I mean, that's immediately what I thought too, Crooks, was like, wow, it feels like breaking news. And who else can you go to? That's the only person you can go to. We haven't replicated that, and we've all seen what flares look like when they're dropped. Crooks, those aren't flares.
Well, there's two distinct events that occurred on this night. The event at 8:30 p.m. with what people described as the V-shaped craft hovering or moving really slow over the city of Phoenix. And then at 10 p.m., the string of lights in the sky, that's the one that people really believe that might have been flares, but...
And welcome to Extraterrestrial University, ETU, the ETU crew, live in the mix here. Well, not quite live, but live in a way. Live now, and then it's pre-recorded as we work our way through. Excited to have everybody back together as we work our way towards Lesson 10. It is Lesson 10, right?
Lesson 10, Pat. How do you feel about hitting Lesson 10, baby?
It's pretty amazing. Like we've had some milestones too. So we're in double-digit lessons, but we've also found one of our episodes to be in triple digits. No, 4 digits, quad digits. Dude, I can't even talk tonight.
You know, yeah. Well, Pat, I was just going to compliment you. I love your intros, man. Reminds me of a radio broadcast. But Crooks, what was the magic sauce for that episode? It was special.
Well, Mel's Hole, for some reason, it resonates with people. We talked about that. That story's been around for 3 decades, nearly 29 years ago. Let me tell you, right now would have been a Sunday night 29 years ago. This would have been when Mel was contacting the show to say that the military had arrived at his property over the weekend. So this is all kind of cool that it's happening tonight while we're filming it. But yeah, Mel's Hole. For whatever reason, people are just fascinated the idea of a 9-foot diameter hole, potentially bottomless. Well, we know it's at least 80,000 feet deep. People are just attracted to a story like that. What can I say?
We had some interesting and amazing speculations in the comments about what it could be.
Yeah.
Pat, what's in store for us tonight, Pat?
Well, we're talking about the year 1997. Crooks had referenced Mel's Hole. Well, a few months later, there was a big event that occurred in the Southwest in Phoenix, Arizona. And there was also kind of sightings that also lingered into Nevada, which was interesting, kind of exploring that very similar things have been seen the day before over in Las Vegas. But as we work our way towards back to Phoenix, the Phoenix Lights, which is one that's talked about quite a bit. Art Bell has gone on record as calling it the second greatest case in ufology behind Roswell. And with the amount of people that saw it in all the different takes, we're going to have a chance to kind of sample the process. So we'll watch a video that does a really good job. It's about 5 minutes summarizing the event. And then we're going to jump back into Art Bell and Peter Davenport. And those guys have been alongside one another for some big events. But to explore the audio as we go there, we're taken directly from Coast to Coast AM. I'm excited to get into that one because the first one, the first recording we listened to will be that happened on that night. So Peter Davenport calling into the show, and then we'll get into a couple other pieces of audio that are actually a lot closer aligned to the anniversary about 9 years later, where they hear two very compelling eyewitness accounts from three ladies that were involved in that process. So I think it's going to get interesting as we roll into this. I got to say something. It's when it comes down to Art Bell, man, Crooks, he brings the goods.
Yeah, he delivers. It's a shame that he's not with us anymore, but there is countless hours of material available online for anyone to go reference and enjoy. So he's gone, but he's not gone. So
yeah, he's forever memorialized within the recordings and the internet and everything that's happening on YouTube. I know that there's also some separate, I don't know who's involved with it, but there's some kind of archives online that people are kind of come together to manage. So that's also interesting too. Tom, what do you know about Phoenix Lights?
Well, it's a major one. Pre my UFO obsession, I remember, I graduated in 1997. I remember that being covered. Larry King would always have the UFO guests on, and this has been featured in every major UFO documentary. We've sampled the phenomenon by James Fox several times. He does a really good job on that one. I watched as many of yours as I could, Pat, and those are also good resources. So I'm ready to go for it tonight. I'm excited to talk about it. I think this is a legitimate one. I think UFO history is just history that we have discounted and redacted a little bit, but I know we can't get started until we get the stamp of approval from Crooks.
I think it's time, folks. Let's talk UFOs.
All right. I say we can't have a show without that. That's basically the one that starts the engine.
That might be our first short, just a compilation of let's talk UFOs. Let's talk UFOs. Let's talk UFOs.
Perfect. It's our next logical progression is to start getting into YouTube Reels.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
so.
Yeah, so you guys see I added the end screen. I figured that out.
Yeah, Tom, you're doing a good job of putting this stuff together. Like I said, I wanted to give you credit too on the thumbnail of the last one.
Yeah, I don't know. Claudia didn't like it. I don't know. I know what I should do. The advice I got was I need to send you guys 3. And the thumbnail should be, maybe sometimes we can work on it right after a show too, if we have the energy. But
yeah, well, was it because of the seal? Because the seal
threw her off. Yeah. She's like, what is that?
Eyes. I feel like those eyes stare into your soul.
I know. Yeah. I liked it, but maybe it needed, I don't know, the black background. Maybe that's something we need to get away from, because maybe people look at that as like, oh, the guy didn't know what to put, so he just left it black. So I'm always open to making things better constantly. So
I always call it trial and error too. We're learning as we're going. I mean, 10 episodes in, we've been able to really sample a lot and do a lot of, experience a lot in this 10 episodes. So excited as we keep going, but I'll jump into the video for the first one, come back, talk about it a little bit. So I figured the format will be as usual, play a video, talk about it, play a video, talk about it. And then before you know it, we'll be to the end of the show. So
sounds good.
All right, let's go ahead and get rocking and rolling.
Henderson, Nevada, March 13th, 1997. At 6:55 p.m., police in this small desert city received reports of a massive, V-shaped, unidentified flying object in the night sky. Over the next 3 hours, the craft is witnessed by thousands of people as it journeys southeast into the state of Arizona. Because most of the sightings were reported by the residents of Phoenix, the incident is known as the Phoenix Lights.
For me, it was just another night. I was at home, I was upstairs in our bedroom, and I'm lying in bed. I see 3 lights pop up. I grab my video camera, I run outside on the balcony, and I did capture video of formations of these lights or actual craft arranged in a V or triangle. We're talking mile to 8 miles wide, gliding silently, some at a distance, but most at rooftop level. Some people said they could have thrown a rock at it. It was that close.
Phoenix is a city of about 5 million people. And here they are looking up and seeing this immense UFO flying at fairly low altitude, quite slowly. This was a sighting on almost unprecedented scale.
The giant V-shaped object reportedly hovered above Phoenix for 3 hours before it finally disappeared over the horizon. The Phoenix Lights incident made headlines across the country. Many eyewitnesses were convinced that what they saw was not a man-made airplane, but rather an extraterrestrial spacecraft.
Lots of people saw this. You have a lot of general consistency with how this was reported. But you had skeptics saying, well, the thing that people saw going down the state was actually just aircraft. And then a spokesperson from the National Guard made an announcement and said, yeah, those lights that people saw over the city, that was actually flares that we dropped by A-10 Warthog aircraft. Not if you talk to the witnesses. There were a number of witnesses who were quite adamant that this was extraterrestrial. And one of the witnesses, turns out, was actually the governor of the state, Fife Symington.
As a pilot and a former Air Force officer, I can definitively say that this craft did not resemble any man-made object that I'd ever seen.
With the Phoenix Lights phenomena, what's really exciting is that more and more credible people have come forward. All I knew is that it was so beyond anything I ever imagined being here on this earth. To date, the Phoenix Lights phenomena has never been recreated or explained.
While the Phoenix Lights is one of the most extraordinary UFO encounters in history, it is just one of many mysterious sightings that have taken place in the state of Arizona. According to the National UFO Reporting Center, there have been approximately 5,000 UFO reports in Arizona, going all the way back to the 1940s.
On July 7, 1947, William A. Rhodes, an amateur photographer, saw an elliptical metallic object. He managed to capture 2 excellent photographs of this object at very low altitude. And he sent them into the Arizona Republic newspaper, which published them on the front page. And if you look at these photographs, you can see that they show a very solid-looking metallic gray object at low altitude. These photographs have never been debunked, so this is a very important case.
There was what I believe is a genuine UFO crash that occurred in Kingman, Arizona in May of 1953. This was apparently the recovery of a virtually intact downed flying saucer. The witnesses came out, and this was quite a significant case. And then probably the most famous of the many UFO sightings Arizona has had is the Travis Walton abduction experience from 1975 that took place in November of that year and made national news. And so Arizona has its own long history of anomalous activity, for sure.
That was really good one, Pat. Good choice.
Yeah, so I thought that one, yeah, very, very solid. And I thought it was interesting, you know, to also go into some of the other cases that have been cited with that in Arizona. But Washington, I know, is one of the leaders in terms of sightings, but Arizona has got to be right up there as well. And I was also excited that it was William Shatner that was voicing it. So I'm like, this is even more awesome, because I've always been a fan of William Shatner.
There's something about his narration.
Oh, it's great. I mean, of course, it's Captain Kirk, but there's just something that's great about him. He's still going strong. I think he's in his mid-90s.
Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah, I don't know how go, but go ahead, Tom.
Oh yeah, Pat, give it right back to you. But yeah, Nick Pope was in there. I know he was, I think, Ministry of Defense in Great Britain, but just wanted to our hearts and minds to kind of be on. He recently told everyone he has stage 4 esophageal cancer. So he's a really major, significant person in the community. So that's kind of sucks.
Tough one, man. I don't know, this whole thing about aging in life. I tell you what, it's not an easy process sometimes.
Yeah, it's tough, but
I recognize our boy Nick Pope in that video right off. That guy's been on History Channel. He's been part of a lot of documentaries and Ancient Alien episodes and anything along this kind of subject matter. Old Nick Pope, he seems to be right in the middle of it. So
he does. Yeah, he seems like a really good guy. Yeah.
Well, what is it about the Southwest, Crooks? I tell you what, it's a hotbed.
Well, it certainly seems like it. Roswell, New Mexico, we know is not that far away, but that little clip was shedding some light, to the fact that Arizona has its own history. They spoke of a downed UFO craft in 1953. I'd love to investigate that a little more and see what we can find out about that. But that little clip also introduced us to some characters as far as this Phoenix Lights go. We saw a little clip of the governor, Fife Symington, in there. And I think in 97, when the sighting occurred, he held a press conference, and I think he kind of tried to downplay the whole deal. He marched out a person dressed in an alien costume to kind of maybe put the public at ease that it was just kind of a hoax, or they didn't see what they thought they saw. He was trying to downplay it and spin it in a certain way initially, but some years later he did come out and say that he actually saw the V-shaped craft himself. So he kind of did a 180 on the whole thing.
That was infuriating to a lot of people at the time who were trying to bring it to Phoenix City Council. You're right, Crooks. He started off the press conference like it was something that they were concerned about. He had his buddy in an alien costume show up and take off the mask, and everybody had a laugh and a giggle, and that's the frustration. I think, besides us coming together every week, guys, to have fun and talk, like to that stigma, it's got to go away. There's so much compelling evidence that we need to, I think, grow up and move past that sort of thinking.
Yeah, well, we're on our way. I guess how many years ago was that? That was close to 29 years ago. Probably, Crooks, is what we've said, if we're basing it off of kind of that time, because it was just a couple months after Mel's Hole.
Pat, it was only 3 weeks after Mel's Hole.
Only 3 weeks. Oh,
3
wow.
weeks. Yeah.
Okay. So think about that, man. I bet Art Bell was loving it. First he gets Mel's Hole, and then the Phoenix Lights happen a couple months later. And we'll work our way into the next call that happened on the night of it. And Art Bell talks about how the switchboard was absolutely lighting up, and the same thing for Peter Davenport, that they were getting calls left and right. So we'll have a chance to sample that.
Pat, before we jump into that call, I want to lay a little more context to March 13, 1997. The Hale-Bopp comet was circling through our solar system at that time, and it was visible to the naked eye. So during these very few months, I mean, this exact time frame, people were going out on clear nights to stare up in the sky, trying to get a glimpse of that comet. And these folks in Phoenix got more than they bargained for that night when this craft flew over the city. Most of these people were out looking for the comet, and then they see this thing.
Wow. So that would also account for the amount of people that were out there, because there was a lot of eyewitnesses. And it kind of made me go back to the idea of Westfall in Australia, of how many people were out there seeing it. There was far more that exceeded that amount that had a chance to see it. You know, in a city as large as Phoenix, and the amount of people out there, as far as, you know, Tucson and other surrounding areas, you know, within that airspace. So it's a fascinating thing to explore. So yeah, we've set the stage, and let's get into a call that night between Art Bell and Peter Davenport.
Peter.
Good evening, Art.
Hi. What in the world is going on?
Well, I'm not sure myself, but it's been a very busy night in the skies above Arizona tonight. Just about 3 hours ago, we started taking calls nose to tail from all over Arizona. The first call came in from a retired police officer who lives in Paulden, Arizona. That's, I guess, about 150 or 200 miles straight north of Phoenix, north of Prescott, Arizona.
Right.
He was out with his family driving. They saw a cluster of lights. It looked like 4 or 5, maybe 6 of them in a large cluster, followed by a single lone light behind them, moving from northwest to southeast approximately. That was the first of what turned out to be many calls. I've taken about 18 calls tonight from Arizona. Those objects were seen over Paulden. A minute later, they were seen over Prescott, Arizona.
A minute later.
That's, it's got to be at least 50, maybe more like 100 miles between Paulden and Prescott, Arizona. 2 or 3 minutes later, they were seen all over Phoenix, Arizona, over Glendale, over Tempe, and literally the calls were coming in on top of each other.
Listen, I can tell you it's true, because I sat down here at the board just before the program, began to answer a few calls, and the Arizona calls were frantic. Art, you should see what's going on down here.
Yeah.
So what are people saying? What is the best description of these objects so far?
Yeah, there have been multiple descriptions, but the people up in northern Arizona saw lights that were distinctly red. By the time they'd gotten down to Phoenix, they were white, the color of stars, bluish white, people described. But, excuse me, I'm suffering from a cold here tonight. But
so are most of the people I know.
Yeah. It is still not clear to me whether we're dealing with one extremely large object, or whether in point of fact there were 5 objects. I think the best report, one of the best we took from Phoenix, was from an amateur astronomer who was looking at these objects. He apparently has very good vision. He was able to discern that each one of the 5 lights that he was looking at itself individually was made up of 2 lights, 2 faint lights. It looks to me as though we are dealing with a fleet of objects. He reported, or another observer reported, that when one turned, they all turned together, as if by the same command. Now, I don't know if that's changing orientation of lights on a single large object or what. We rarely really know what we're dealing with here, but there's no doubt but what there was a dramatic sighting over Arizona.
All right, did anybody take out a camera?
One person that we talked to went for his camcorder, and by the time he got back a minute later, everything was gone.
Yep.
Most people did not see these things for more than 2 or 3 minutes. One party said he estimated that it was 10 minutes that he'd been watching it, but he wasn't sure. That's really not enough time to go dig out the old camcorder from your steamer trunk. And
I know it.
But most people should prepare themselves and if they own camcorders, get the batteries charged, always keep fresh tape in it, and be ready to catch something on film if you see it. But interestingly, excuse me, we took 2 other dramatic sightings from the state of Washington. I have no idea whether these were in any way related to the sightings over Arizona, but we had one object reported from Castle Rock, Washington tonight by the 911 facility down in that locale. There was a brilliant, intensely bright flash followed by a huge veil of cascading sparks coming down out of the sky. We don't know what it was, but we've been taking a lot of calls very similar to that over the last roughly 2 or 3 weeks, I would say. Certainly something's going on, Art. I just thought your listeners tonight would like to get a fresh report of what was seen to occur over Arizona.
Okay, how long ago, when was the last reported sighting in Arizona?
The last reported sighting was at about 8:35 p.m. tonight.
Okay.
That's Arizona time.
Well, a lot of people, I guess, enjoyed it. I hope they enjoyed it because I got a lot of calls. You got a lot of calls.
Yeah.
Something happened.
Yeah. One thing I might add, if we have just a second more.
Sure.
I tried to contact Luke Air Force Base tonight. They took a lot of calls on this. 2 people reported to us that as the objects moved to the south, generally over Phoenix, people saw 2 what appeared to be military jets coming from the northwest or maybe the north, flying right at the formation of objects. And the objects suddenly disappeared very shortly thereafter. And the 2 apparently jet aircraft, they could be heard to be jet aircraft, turned around and went back to the northwest. That's in the direction of Luke Air Force Base. If
Luke didn't want to talk to you, huh?
No, I called Luke just less than 30 minutes ago. I was on the line to Luke. I was told by a staff sergeant in the command post there that he could not put me in touch with a commissioned officer at Luke Air Force Base. He represented that he was the commander of Luke Air Force Base tonight.
Really?
I spent 4 years in the military. I know you
What's
did.
going on here?
That gentleman, that staff sergeant, may have been telling me the exact truth, but times must have changed since I was in the military.
Well, if he's the commander of the base, then I'll tell you the cutbacks have been underrated, underreported.
Yes, that's a good point. But he said he was unable to put me in touch with a duty officer or a command officer at all tonight, that I'd have to talk to their public relations officer tomorrow.
All right. Well, maybe giving out your reporting number up there will get us some more detailed reports, or who knows, maybe somebody got a picture. So let's give out your number.
Yeah, the UFO hotline in Seattle is area code 206-722-3000. 722-3000 in Seattle. And I'll give out our new website address, if I may.
I didn't even know you had one.
It's one of those easy-to-remember website addresses. We just started 2 weeks ago.
Yes.
It's www.ufocenter, one word, UFOCENTER.com. And I hope tomorrow we'll be able to put a statement on that website about what happened over Arizona tonight.
All right. We will get a link into www.ufocenter.com. We'll get a link into you, and we'll look for that information to appear.
That'll be fine.
Peter, thank you.
Thank you very much, Art.
That's Peter Davenport at the UFO Reporting Center in Seattle. So as you can see, there is a lot going on within hours of this program. And this program is about to deal with the subject of UFOs.
It's a hot time in the old town tonight.
Dude, Pat, thanks for playing that. It makes me feel like we're right in the moment, man. Could you imagine being on the front lines? You know, people have seen this stuff in the sky, and who do you go to for answers? You turn on your radio and you try to get answers. You know that Coast to Coast and Art Bell, they're going to be covering this topic, and they're covering it live. Like there's no one else you can go to for a resource to try to get an answer.
I strongly agree, Crooks. It feels like I hopped in a DeLorean and took a time machine back to that night. I mean, that's immediately what I thought too, Crooks, was like, wow, it feels like breaking news, and who else can you go to? That's the only person you can go to.
You can count on it. And yeah, Art Bell and Peter Davenport, side by side, reporting to the masses. And it was just interesting hearing that. and then being able to hear the panel that was put together, for 9 years later, almost 10 years later, that we'll get a chance to sample. But going to that night, though, I can only imagine what it was like for those guys in their prospective locations. So at that point, Peter Davenport was in Seattle, and that was pretty much the largest amount of time that he's been in his position. He was over in Seattle. When did he move to Eastern Washington?
I'm not sure, Pat, but I don't know. Do you guys know his credentials? Is he Dr. Peter Davenport? Is he a scientist?
He's a scientist. Yeah, he graduated from Stanford. So I was reading an article about it later. It's a topic that would be interesting to kind of dive into later. But he was just talking about how comprehensive their investigations are, because there are, I think it's 5 other people that are investigators alongside him that are affiliated with the center that he's been a part of for in charge of for over 25 years, and so that'll be something I think we kind of talk more about. I would say maybe a future talking point is so you can talk about this article. It was like a Stanford alumni magazine I was reading, and they were talking about the amount of time and I say care that these guys his team puts into these investigations. It's pretty substantial. They're not just reporting willy-nilly. They put a lot of time and effort into this stuff.
Yeah, he's the real deal. You guys, maybe these aren't flares, like the lady mentioned in the first History Channel William Shatner video. We haven't replicated that, and we've all seen what flares look like when they're dropped. Crooks, those aren't flares.
Well, there's 2 distinct events that occurred on this night. The event at 8:30 p.m. with what people described as the V-shaped craft hovering or moving really slow over the city of Phoenix, and then at 10 p.m. the string of lights in the sky. That's the one that people really believe that might have been flares. But there's 2 events, and it's hard to. People sometimes just want to kind of lump them all into the same event and discount them as a flare, but there's really 2 things going on here this night.
Okay, I don't think I knew that.
Yeah. But I'm sure we're going to hear, I know these testimonies that we're going to hear in these next calls, they're both discussing the 8:30 event, the main one with the lights, the 5 lights that they say are part of a V-shaped craft.
Well,
okay.
Art is really good on the questioning part of what did you see? What do you think you saw? This isn't just an instance of what was that called? Of swamp gas, which had been brought up in previous. There was a previous sighting, and they said that the reason that people saw what they saw was due to swamp gas. This was down in Louisiana a number of years ago. So he references that, which is a sighting that occurred a long time ago. I think it was in the late 60s. And then the idea of the flares. And so we get into that. It's basically a mother and a daughter who are the first callers. And at the time, the daughter was 21, and now she's 29. And it was interesting to hear their account of it, of going outside, and then all of a sudden it just being right above them. So they had a real bird's eye view of it. So that'll be interesting to get into that.
All right, let's go get it, Professor Dundas.
All right.
Witnesses during their first hour, and then listen to some of the investigators who have been kind enough to come on to the program with us tonight. I defy anybody to believe the official government story, and we will maybe talk later in the program about what may have been going on in the government that night. They must have been shocked to see 5 objects go over Phoenix, Arizona, each one of which we estimate to have been the size of an international airport. That's how big they were.
An international airport.
An international airport these objects were at least 1 and maybe more like 2 miles in width. I think that's what all investigators agree on. We'll hear some of those investigators in about an hour's time or so.
My God.
But imagine 5 of those going over Phoenix and surrounding areas. And the most incredible thing, and I hope we get a chance to talk about the press coverage later in the program.
Oh, I promise you, we'll make time, yes.
The most incredible thing is that it created almost no ripple in the news media whatsoever, even when some of the major news media in this country were apprised of what had happened that night and the day following, and they elected to turn their back on it and not cover it.
I know.
It's the most bizarre thing. People think of me, the Coast listeners who've heard me before, probably think of me as a ufologist. In point of fact, I think it's more correct to say that I'm an observer, of unusual psychology, human psychology, and unusual societal response to the UFO phenomenon.
Mm-hmm.
And that strikes me as being more strange than having 5 gigantic objects go over Phoenix. The fact that it was not covered at all in the national press for almost 3 months is even more bizarre still, in my estimation.
And then the fact that the way it got covered after 3 months astounds me.
Yeah.
Now, do you recall the night itself? Of course, we began early on taking calls here. It was just beyond all imagination, Peter, what went on here on my phones.
Absolutely.
It went berserk. And I'm assuming that your phones did the same thing.
It's one of those rare instances where I don't turn the tape recorder off, Art. I just let it run and answer calls sequentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
So coming up, we've got a couple of witnesses, actually, to what actually happened. It'd be Sue Watson, Mrs. Sue Watson, and I think with Sue is her daughter. Is that correct, Sue?
That's right, my daughter Monica.
And also, so Sue and Monica and Stacy Rhodes. And are all of you, Stacy, are you in Phoenix?
No, I'm in Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, okay. We've got a little crackle on the line from you there,
we were
Stacy.
trying to get rid of it here.
I see, all right. Well, let us begin then. Peter, why don't you do the interview? Sue, you're first.
Okay. Did you want to ask me a question, or did you just want me to?
Well, Peter, how do you want to do it?
Yeah. Well, just a brief preface. These 2 witnesses are, in my opinion, the best that we've run across in the last 9 years. I invited them on tonight because, number one, they had a wonderful view of the objects that went directly over their heads. Number 2, each of them was with 4 other people. So it's not as though we have just one person telling us what she allegedly saw. And they're excellent witnesses. With that, why don't we start with Sue, who saw the object before Stacy did. Sue up in northern Phoenix, just south of Camelback Mountain, between Camelback Mountain and Sky Harbor Airport, as I remember. And just one last preface, if I may. Any of our listeners who are online who would like to see the actual objects or artists' renditions of what Sue and Stacy are going to be talking about during this hour, they go to our website, UFOcenter.com, and click on the link that will lead them to the illustrations that I've taken from my slide presentation. With that, Sue, why don't you just take it from there and describe where you were
and
when you were, and with whom, and what you saw, please.
Well, actually, my daughter Monica, who's on the phone, drove up to the house because we were all going to go out that night with 3 of my other children. So she came up and came running into the house and got us all to come out to the front yard. And that is when we first saw the lights coming over Camelback Mountain, and there were probably 5 big, huge lights in front of this, what I was calling the vehicle, because we didn't know what it was. And it came very slowly over a very big mountain, just literally a mile north of me, maybe.
Sue, you say your daughter's on the line right now?
Yes, Monica's the first one that saw it.
Monica, are you there?
I'm here. Hi.
Hi, Monica.
Hi.
All right, so you're the first one who saw it, right?
I was, yes.
Monica, was it beyond lights? In other words, could you see form in between the lights? Perhaps blinking out the stars, or in other words, could you make out form beyond lights?
I couldn't see stars through between the lights, if that's what you're asking.
That's what I'm asking.
I couldn't make out an exact shape. The lights were definitely in some sort of form. I guess I've always described it as like a boomerang, like the shape of a boomerang.
If I might ask, how old are you, Monica?
I'm 29.
29. All right.
Yes, so I guess I was 21.
And so there you were looking at. Would you call it a craft or many craft?
I would have to say one. It would surprise me if somebody were to say that it were more than one, if they had actually seen it.
So you believe it was one giant craft?
Yeah.
And you stood there and watched it for how long before you ran for the house?
Well, I turned around. As soon as I got out of my car, I turned around, and it obviously caught my eye coming up over Camelback Mountain.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing I saw was one lights, and then I felt like I saw maybe 3, and then 5, and I stood there in awe, wondering what it was. And I was almost afraid to turn around and run because I didn't want to miss it.
Right.
And I knew it was unusual because that's not a flight pattern. You would never see an airplane coming over Camelback Mountain heading south like that.
Right.
So I knew that it was something odd and huge, and I was a skeptic for sure, and I just couldn't make out what it was. So I think I probably stood there for 10, 15 seconds before I finally decided to run inside and get the rest of my family.
And that was how many more people?
I think there were four more besides me.
So 4, Mom and 3 others came running out with you, and
right.
And by then, what were you seeing?
By then, it was hovering, I guess, in between Camelback Mountain and our home.
Hovering.
And it was if it was moving, it was moving extremely slowly.
Right.
And at that point, we were just awestruck, to be honest with you, and we just could not figure out what in the world, what kind of craft could be that large, because it took up so much of the sky. And as like you had asked me before, you couldn't see through it. You couldn't see sky past it, like through the lights.
Sue, do you corroborate that? Would your impression be that it was a craft, that there was something solid between the lights?
It was absolutely a craft and something solid, because it was right over us, and we were looking up, and our 2 boys, my 2 younger children that were out there, were actually laying on their backs in the yard and just watching it, and we were just watching it, and it was so close. I mean, they were waving. Boys, now it was dark outside, but they were waving. It was so close, like maybe somebody up there can see us.
Holy mackerel.
Yeah, it was phenomenal. And then it was huge. I can't even imagine how many football fields it must have consumed. It's so hard now I remember when I called and I was asked how many fists would it take to cover it.
Uh-huh.
And I was just trying to, I went right outside when Peter asked me that. And because I had a long cord on my phone, and I ran outside, and I was like, oh, my gosh, over 5 or 6 or 7 fists.
So then you were actually on the phone with Peter as you were seeing it?
No, I wasn't. This was later when I called the airport here, and they gave me his number. He asked me, go look and tell me, would a thumb cover it? And I said, absolutely not. And then he said, would a fist cover it? And I said, absolutely not. And I could still visualize it. It was very, it was just maybe an hour or so, I'm not sure when I called him, that he asked me that question. So I could definitely visualize how much of the space over my house it took up.
That's gigantic.
It's huge.
All right. Did this thing just suddenly disappear? Did it suddenly take off? What did the craft do?
Well, it was going very slow with absolutely no noise. Right, Monica?
Yeah, no, we couldn't hear anything. Yeah, unlike an airplane that we would hear, like normally hear,
right,
or a jet or something. Yeah.
So we were out there somewhere, between 3 and 5 minutes watching it. And again, I'm not more than a mile and a half from that mountain that it came over. So it passed our house, and we could see it. It was so huge, and we're looking at planes. I mean, that's what was weird. You could see jets just around in the normal pattern around Phoenix. That, by the way, I went out later and I could cover with my thumb, just to give you an idea. And these are low jets ready to make the circle to go land at Sky Harbor. And we kept watching it approximately, I would guess, down to McDowell, which is 2 miles away from me. And then we were just so fascinated, and all of a sudden, we saw it just jet off. I mean,
jet south. Just, yeah,
Right.
like just
All right, now, you see, that's very important. So you actually saw motion. You saw it take off, just like that.
Oh, my gosh, yes.
All right, you see...
It's almost like we just lost it. Like it just was there, and then it was gone. It just zoomed out. Like
all of the lights.
Oh, yeah, the lights were past us by then. The lights were in the front, and you could still see the lights around it. It almost looked like the yellowish kind of amber lights that are in parking lots at night.
Yes, I'm trying to differentiate between flares burning out and a craft taking off, you see.
No, the craft was over our home, and we watched it go south, and then we saw it go very quickly away south. Did not burn out.
What do you two think you saw?
Well, at this point, with no one coming forward, obviously, it's a UFO. At the time, we thought it was something we were going to read about the next morning.
Well, I guess what I mean by that is, do you believe that you saw a craft from another planet, from another galaxy, from another somewhere, not here?
I would say yes, because I've never seen anything so quiet and so large flying in these skies ever in my life. And what would you say?
I gotta admit that before ever seeing anything like this or having experienced this, I was definitely a skeptic. And when we came inside and called the airport, and just because we were curious about what it was, and they couldn't give us an explanation, they said they had picked nothing up on their radar or whatever anywhere in our area.
Did they sound like they had received a lot of calls in addition to yours?
They didn't admit it. They didn't admit it at the time.
No kidding.
They kind of acted like we were crazy, to be honest.
Really? Now isn't that interesting?
Right, and so they were kind of trying to tone us down maybe, and then again, like, you know, as my mom had mentioned, given us Peter's number at that point, but yeah, like my mom had said, if no one else can come up with a better explanation, you can't help but I guess wonder what else it could have been, because it was enormous. It was awesome. It was just phenomenal. I mean, it was just nothing like I'd ever seen before.
So you two think you saw a spaceship?
Well, yeah, now I do. I didn't at the time.
At the time, what did you think it was?
I didn't know. I thought it was some new invention that they were seriously going to tell us what went over our city that night.
Oh, I see. Something we had done that would, and the major announcement would be coming soon.
Right.
All right. So, gentlemen, what are your thoughts so far after we get to hear the mother-daughter eyewitness account?
So, Pat, this is the approximately 8:30 p.m. sighting. This is the initial one, right?
That is correct.
Okay. And she describes her location just a little bit south of Camelback Mountain. I'm sure some of our viewers are aware of, you know, some of the landmarks around Phoenix. That's a notable peak within the city, just outside Scottsdale. And it's just a few miles north of Sky Harbor Airport. And she was describing that geography just perfectly. And she was even naming streets that jive with, you know, some of the ones that I'm aware of. And it was amazing. She described that it was low enough that her two young sons were waving at it, expecting someone in the craft to be able to see them, like, you know, trying to describe that it was pretty low. Yeah, and I don't know. Yeah, what do you think there?
I'm going to go to Tone. We'll work our way around the horn. Go ahead, Tone. What are your thoughts? Because it's interesting, the kids laying on their backs, watching, you know, like looking at the stars, and that being that close to her, waving at it. I mean, that's pretty significant.
Yeah. And Art Bell pointed out the significance of the instantaneous acceleration where that thing took off, because then that takes out that it was a blimp. But yeah, Pat, before I pass it back to you, Crooks, when you were getting the video queued up, Crooks and I were having a conversation, and it just seems a little bit odd that there's not clarity on the fact that there was, you know, the earlier sighting and the later sighting. But I wasn't aware that the later one had kind of been debunked, because I would like to backtrack a little bit, because I was like, no way those are flares. And Crooks, I believe that they were flares on, and I mentioned, well, they had to be on parachutes, and Crooks is like, well, yeah, they were. I just don't get that part, why that's not clear. Like, hey, there was 2 events that night. One was debunked, as far as I know.
Okay, so at 10 o'clock, about an hour and a half after this sighting, people on the north side of Phoenix, some of the witnesses claim that you needed to be kind of north in relation to these Estrella Mountains that kind of are on the southwest side of town. If you were too close to the Estrella Mountains, you weren't able to see the string of lights that appeared at 10 o'clock. You needed to be at a higher elevation or far enough north to be able to see them. And this string of lights, the story that came out days later was that the military, you know, some A-10 Thunderbolt Warthog fighters had dropped a string of flares beyond the Estrella Mountain, and that's what people were seeing all night. But that doesn't explain the 8:30 p.m. sightings directly over the center of Phoenix, like making its way right over the airport. Pat, I think you have a little piece of information about a sighting at the airport from a pilot of a small aircraft. Is that not?
Yeah, that is correct. So as I was exploring and digging through all the videos and information, there was a pilot a single engine airplane that was piloting that as they were going in towards Sky Harbor, and they had called into the airport to ask if there were any existing planes, because they saw this set of lights and it looked like it was a craft, but he wasn't sure. And when they called in to the tower, they reported back that there was no other planes. Well, the name of that person that was flying with his stepson Oliver, that is Kurt Russell, the actor. And so Oliver Hudson is his stepson, technically, from Goldie Hawn's first marriage. You have Kate Hudson, his sister, who is probably more well-known, I would say, out of the two. They're both actors. Oliver Hudson was in a show called Nashville, and he played one of the bad guys. I hated that guy's guts. I tell you what. He played such a good, like, sinister, like, record executive. I was like, I believed every second of it that he was just a dirtbag.
Dude, we're getting the pop culture moment right in the middle of our story. I love it, Pat.
It's perfect, because initially I was like, man, there's not going to be any time for pop culture because of the length of these recordings. And I was like, I felt like if we take a recording away, it's almost like we're shortchanging the experience. So I figured, we'll stick, what's another 10 minutes onto the length of this thing, that people can check into it. But there's our pop culture moment, Crooks. I'm glad that you brought it up. But yeah, I didn't even know that Kurt Russell was a pilot.
And I didn't either. He came up while we were researching the subject, little clips. I think he was on the Tonight Show talking about, he didn't realize it at the time. It was many years later that he even thought twice about it, because they were describing, he'd heard reports, it was a show about the Phoenix lights, and they were talking about a pilot in a small aircraft, like announcing it to the airport. And he's like, wait, that was me. So that was kind of interesting. But
yeah, what time was that, Pat? So was that the legitimate one at earlier in the night around 8?
Yeah, it was the earlier one, around that 8 to that 8 to 8:30 range that has been previously discussed, and not the later one. So that's another aspect that I thought that was interesting, that was brought up. And he talks about, I don't remember what the name of his plane, but like he ends up listing like the numbers of the plane. He's like, yeah, that was me. And so whoever would have thought, that Kurt Russell would be involved in this, and Kurt Russell also has kind of some Northwest ties. Have you guys ever heard of the Portland Mavericks?
No.
No.
All right. There is a really great documentary about the Portland Mavericks. So the Portland Beavers leave for Spokane, Washington, right, in the 70s. And they're just not having very good outcomes and attendance and everything. So they leave and go to Spokane. And then that opens the door for our Class A ball club to come in. And so Bing Russell, Kurt Russell's dad, starts this Class A ball club. Kurt Russell was playing ball over in Walla Walla, of all places. He played single A baseball. He was a really good baseball player in high school. Yeah, and so he ends up in Portland for, especially during like the acting strike. So he was there for a couple of years. And I highly recommend looking into that. The Portland Mavericks, they only existed for 4 years. And then they made rules that no independent club could join an existing league as a result of that. So this has really nothing to do with the Phoenix Lights. It has everything to do with the fact that we are PNW kids. That's really all this has to do with. But going back to the pilot and everything, so we've seen a wide variety of accounts and things happening in this. And for me, this is one of the more compelling sightings. I thought Westall was pretty compelling, but this is also very compelling.
Do you think there's a link between the, I guess, the infiltration of major news sources from intelligence agencies, that they have certain people at certain spots? I can't get into the technical part of it, but I know that Dan Sheehan with New Paradigm Institute can lay it out really well, especially how it relates to all of his other cases. But it does seem pretty weird that these major things that happen, when Peter Davenport's like, I'm not a ufologist, I'm an observer of these societal sort of abnormalities, that we don't acknowledge that there's a giant thing floating around in the sky.
Well, and then there's an effort for a disinformation campaign, essentially, that follows it, and they try to get people to get on board, kind of like Arizona's governor at the time. He starts out, and then he backtracks, and then he goes and ends up supporting the theory later on. But it's hard to say who was in his ear. I would imagine there were some powerful people that were probably in his ear, telling him to, make light of it in order to muddy the waters and try to get out of it somehow. But then you march into present day, it's becoming a lot more acceptable, and people are more willing to challenge those norms that existed in those time periods. I mean, we all almost 30 years ago that this happened. But for 1997, I think about the world, at that time period. I know, Tony, you were just about ready to you were graduating from school, and Crooks and I were just about a year later than you. And so we were in our junior going into senior years. Life was pretty simple. So to think about the fact that you have this UFO sighting, that really complicates matters. And I know the government, I'm sure, wanted to do whatever they could for damage control.
Yeah, I mean, it blips on your radar, and then you're like, oh, well, time to eat some more cheeseburgers. That's the way it goes. With Jesse Michaels, I think he's probably the man out there in the UFO world. He thinks that the UFO, the alien non-human scenario, is likely. He's hedging on T. Townsend Brown. He really gets deep into T. Townsend Brown, a scientist, I think in the late 50s. He puts forth a lot of evidence that anti-gravity, there was a breakthrough, and then it went black. Is there any chance that this is black, unauthorized special access programs, that we have that tech, but it's classified, and for some reason they took a wrong turn that night? Or what do you guys think about that? Because I think we have to take a moment to be like, I think it's possible as well that it could be ours.
Yeah, I think it seems counterintuitive to, if you've got a craft with amazing capabilities like this, like, why would you risk flying it right over a major U.S. city, and risk it being seen? But I think we've seen people say that they want to do that deliberately just to test, how good it is. Maybe they got some ego built into it as well, and they're like, we can fly this right over Phoenix and get away with it, and we've got some of the most state-of-the-art equipment on our in our pocket. So
yeah, I think that's possible. Yeah, to see what the reaction would be. Like if we can fly over a major city here, that we could do it in abroad.
Well, and the talking about the jet propulsion systems, or the lack thereof, how it's essentially silent. That seems to be a theme that kind of radiates amongst a lot of sightings.
Oh yeah, almost all of them.
Almost all of them, yeah. How it was just silent, and then all of a sudden it was there, and then zoop, it wasn't. So that's also a fascinating thing too. So we've made it our way through 3 of the pieces of media. We got a 4th one. Do we keep rolling? Do we want to hear the next person, or do we want to call it quits? Do we feel as though we've given enough encompassing story here?
I motion to play the last video. All those in favor say aye.
Aye, let's try it. I guess.
Aye.
It's going to be more of a continuation. It picks up where our last person left off.
That's correct.
So the craft was flying like really slow south towards the airport, and then about the time that it would have got to the airport, then it kind of sped up and like went out of sight. And now this other woman picks it up south of town.
Yeah, this is over by Tucson.
She's from Tucson, right?
But okay.
It's about midway.
Yeah, doesn't she state that she's on I-10?
Yeah,
which is the main freeway in that area, about halfway between Tucson and Phoenix.
Yeah,
if I remember that correctly. So we're gonna pick this up a little bit beforehand, and then we'll see where it takes us as we get into our final caller of the evening. This was 9 years after the original Phoenix Lights sighting, so stay tuned.
Once again, from the UFO Reporting Center in Seattle, Washington, which has been of just inestimable value to us over the years in terms of gathering information, because God knows there isn't much else out there. Peter Davenport. Peter, welcome back. And
thank you.
And our guests, Sue Watson and daughter, Monica and Stacy Rhodes. Now, there was something the craft did just prior to taking off, Peter said. What was that?
Well, I was the only one that saw it. Did you want me to answer this? I'm sorry.
If you're the only one that saw it, absolutely, yeah. I do, yes.
I was looking at the front of it because it was so fascinating. And, the younger kids were running around and looking at it. And I was looking at it going south, and I saw this flash of light out of the right side of it. And it would almost remind you of like a laser that just shot down to the ground. And I was, I got all excited. I said, did you guys see that? And they were looking. It was that big to where you would miss something like that. And unfortunately, the kids didn't see it, and it didn't do it again, but it was really, really something. But I remember that because I told him that night, that I was the one that saw this flash, and it did. It almost looked like a laser beam went down, which I know sounds strange, but I saw it, so
all right.
That's what I saw.
All right. I think we've got a very good description from the two of you, and completely believable. So I want to thank you both for being here. Well, wait a minute. Hang on the line. You might want to compare notes, because we have Stacy Rhodes here. And Stacy actually is, I think, in, is it Tucson?
Yes.
Tucson, Stacy. So would this be, by the way, let's compare notes, at about the same time, or was there a time difference in when?
My sighting was around 8:30 at night.
All right. And Sue?
Mine was before that. Somewhere from 8:20, 8:25.
Well, that's pretty close. Okay, Stacy, what did you see in Tucson?
Well, actually, I was on I-10, just outside of Casa Grande, Arizona, near the Sacaton Mountains. And a very good friend of mine was driving the car. My mother was in the passenger seat.
Okay, is that close to Tucson or?
Closer to Phoenix.
Close to Phoenix, all right.
It's about midway. And I had my daughter in the back seat passenger side, and her friend was in the, my daughter was driver's seat, and her friend was passenger seat, and I was rear middle.
Right.
And at about 11 o'clock, coming right off the Sacaton Mountains, my friend said, who was driving, exclaimed, "What in the hell is that?" And we saw 3 lights coming off the top of the mountain. And then it proceeded to come over the mountain, and there were 5 lights, 3 in the very front of the craft, and then 1 on each wingtip.
Sue, does that jive?
Yeah, it does, because it was the shape of a boomerang, so you could see where the ends wouldn't, be seen right away at one point, where I was straight on coming over the mountain, so I pretty much saw them.
All right, well, you would have been seeing it from different angles, I presume. Stacy, okay, so you've got a total of 5 lights now.
Yes, we've got a total of 5 lights, and it's still northwest of us, but then it came right over I-10, and we're heading north on I-10, going 80 miles an hour, and the nose of this craft finally came over the roof of my car, and we had a straight-on view of it.
Really?
It was, it was amazing.
All right, and again, Stacy, this is a very important question, because the explanation, of course, was flares. Is there any way what you saw were flares, or did you see the body of a craft?
I saw the body of a craft.
Hello. Okay.
And I actually saw seams when we were underneath it. And
oh my God, really?
Yes. And I did have a 35-millimeter camera. I was attempting to take pictures, but the object was so huge that even one orb or one light completely filled my lens to where I couldn't even take a picture. Someone would have thought I took a close-up of a light.
Stacy, I hear you. How close would you say the craft was to you? How high in the sky?
No more than 2,500 feet.
And would you agree with Sue and Monica as to the size of this thing?
My first estimation from wingtip to wingtip was 3 miles. And from nose to the flat edge that went over me, I estimated at about 1.5 to 2 miles.
God.
We were underneath it for 1 to 2 minutes.
And you were driving.
Went over us till the time the edge exited over the back end of my car. It was at least 1.5 minutes.
And how fast were you going, do you estimate, Stacy?
75 miles an hour plus.
Huh.
And it was going the opposite direction, and you estimate you were
slow hover
under it for 1 to 2 minutes.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my God, that thing is gigantic. She's doing better than a mile a minute, fair amount better than a mile a minute.
At a stationary object.
And you could, now this is very interesting. You could see, you said seams. Is there any way you can get any more descriptive? I mean, that's very good already, but seams.
Like a ship's hull.
I agree.
Oh, you do?
Absolutely. There were lights all the way around it. It was totally illuminated.
And I agree with Sue. I saw the 3 lights on the front and then the 1 on each wingtip, a total of 5 lights.
Well, either one of you, Sue or Monica, did you see what you would call seams?
Well, seams being the outline of a vehicle from the back, it was totally lit up. Not in those big, huge lights you've seen on the news, but I'm telling you, it was totally lit up all the way around that boomerang shape, all the way to the back, everywhere. And it was like this structure, and that's why the boys were waving. They almost thought there must be someone that can see us, because you could see the vehicle, and it was just, I don't know what we were seeing, but we were definitely seeing lights all the way around, not those big spotlights in the front, but I mean there were lights all the way, even on the back.
And because you couldn't see past the sky past it, you had to assume it was solid.
Right. Well, Stacy, though, saw seams. I mean, that's pretty indicting, Stacy. What Stacy, what was your impression of what you were seeing? I mean, to be driving under something this size, and you knew because of how quickly you were driving the scale of what you were seeing. How did that settle in on you? What did you think you were seeing?
Something from out of this world. My heart sunk at first, and then we turned off the radio. The children in the back seat both rolled down the windows and stuck their heads out. And like Sue said, there was no noise whatsoever. And this thing was right above our heads. And
there was no way to stop the car, Stacy, and just get out and look up?
I don't know why we did not stop. There was no conversation going on. I don't know if we were all scared and heading in the opposite direction, thinking, okay, if this is going that way, we should be going the other way.
I hear that, yes.
So I don't know why we didn't stop. In retrospect, I wish I would have. I wish I would have taken a picture of the light, even though it would have probably been undiscernible. And the color of the light, like Sue said, the only thing I can describe it to is when the harvest moon rises, the weird orange color it has when it's right on the horizon.
Yes.
That's what it looked like.
The same color.
It would not come into focus. It was like watery or hazy.
Yeah. You obviously agree on the details here. You obviously saw the same thing.
The lights in the front were clearer, and the ones that went all the way around the vehicle were more like I say, those parking lot lights, that kind of a yellowish.
Yeah, the amber, the harvest moon color.
Uh-huh.
All right. Peter, anything else we need to ask?
Question for Stacy. You were on the highway. There were obviously other cars there.
Yes.
Was anybody else visibly paying attention to this thing?
No, I was amazed. I would have thought people would have been pulling over or having accidents. Nobody seemed to be paying any attention.
That's bizarre.
And another thing Sue had mentioned was, could you cover this object with a fist? I could not. If I laid on my back and opened a newspaper, I could not cover this object out. It completely engulfed my field of vision.
Yeah, that's the whole sky.
The whole sky. The entire sky, and I watched it as it came over the front tip. I watched as it blotted out the stars. Then I got to see the underneath of it. For over a minute, I just sat and stared at this thing, and then directly as the back edge went over me, I sat up to turn around to see it, and there was nothing. I saw no gaseous fumes, no afterburners, and nothing.
Have you seen Independence Day?
I compare it to that, but I don't like to, because then it seems more like I'm following the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was that big. It would crush downtown Tucson. Not all of Tucson, but downtown Tucson. It could not have landed on I-10 in an emergency.
I'm sure
not
you're glad
even on
it
both
didn't.
sides.
Yeah, I've got it. That's just an astounding witness description from all of you. So, listen, I want to thank Sue and Monica and Stacy for sort of setting the stage for us. And I don't believe, have any of you been on here before with me?
I've been on with you on Dreamland one time.
Oh
Art.
my God, that was a long time ago.
I've got a copy of the tape.
Right. Okay. Well, listen again. Thank you both.
Well, thank you, and thank you for keeping this question alive. I would like to know what it was I saw.
Boy, do we have to keep it alive. Thank you. And Peter...
could have crushed downtown Tucson. It was so large.
Yeah, Pat, I think we haven't appreciated the size of the craft that these women and some of the witnesses, are saying how big it was.
Yeah.
They're talking about sometimes miles wide and a mile deep. Like, this thing is humongous. I think somebody referred to it as an aircraft carrier in the sky.
Yes.
Why weren't other folks reacting the way that she was?
That is fascinating to me. How is it that she's seeing all this and nobody else is? Or, maybe she was quick enough to respond to all this. She also had the advantage of she wasn't operating the motor vehicle either.
Yeah.
So
Do you guys know who Whitley Strieber is? I know Eric and Don mentioned him in lesson, was it 7?
I'm not very familiar. No, all I would have known is what was shared in that particular.
Well, I know South Park really made fun of him quite a bit, but I bought one of his books, and he has many stories where people are seeing something and nobody else can see it.
See, that's interesting. You know, one thing that made me think about one of our previous episodes, now that you bring up Uncle Don, you know, where he was talking about how that particular event had been documented by the newspaper and then it disappeared. I'd be curious to know what's marched back to that very first video we watched, you know, and it talked about the Phoenix Lights, and then it talked about some stuff that was put in the Arizona Republic. There was a picture that was featured in there. I wonder if that is present. I wonder, this is just an interesting side note. Did that get suppressed as well? Now that we're talking about, because that was one of the more fascinating things that, I mean, Uncle Don and Eric talked about a bunch of stuff, but that was one thing that stood out to me was how this event happened. It's documented, and then the physical copy of the newspaper just disappears. I wonder if that happened in the Arizona Republic.
I think this one was too big to contain. All they could do was try to change the story. There's a theory that those 10 p.m. lights that were witnessed in the sky, that those were flares that were actually dropped to kind of muddy the waters, disguise the fact that a large ship had flown over the city an hour and a half earlier. And yeah, they're just going to try to say that the whole thing was part of a military exercise.
I think, have you guys seen Investigation Alien by George Knapp on Netflix?
I have not, but if it's on Netflix, I need to give it a watch.
Yeah, maybe check that one out, because I believe maybe it's that one, or maybe it's one of James Fox's, where there's a guy who was into sky watching and had some good video, and I think it was essentially confiscated.
Oh.
Like, hey, can we borrow this? And it never came back.
Oh man, series of mysteries.
Somebody may want to borrow our video tonight and never give it back.
I don't know. We've touched on some interesting talking points.
Yeah.
And
interesting, the whole mental aspect. Let's just get a little crazy here. What if we have seen something like this before, and the memory erasing component is real, and we just don't remember it?
Talking like Men in Black.
Yeah, talking Men in Black. I mean, missing time is just as common as silent crafts and telepathy. Like, these are all very, very consistent amongst the stories. I mean, what if it's just these things happen all the time, and it's just really easy for them to mess with our brain waves, to be like, just send these few waves toward these apes down here, and we just don't remember.
Well, you know, it's interesting over in Des Moines, Washington, you know, they have a celebration that's set up. I can't remember in what part of the year, but it's like a couple of days where it highlights the Maury Island incident. And that is supposed to be the first time that there was an interaction with the quote unquote Men in Black. Yeah. And so that's an interesting thing too. Yeah, I love diving into the idea of why it is that there's so many sightings over in Washington State. But now it's going to lead me to more curiosity about the great state of Arizona. So,
I think most per capita.
Yeah,
Washington. Sure. Yeah, I think it'd be fun one night to pick our favorite NUFORC story, and then each of us tell a story. Because wow, you start going through the archives, and it's, oh my gosh, it's just endless.
Well, you heard it. I never had heard of this before, and I looked it up afterwards. But were you familiar with Art Bell's companion show, Dreamland?
No, I wasn't aware of that either. But the caller mentioned that she'd been on that with him.
Yeah, so I guess Dreamland was created to explore some of the spookier elements of the paranormal. So getting away more from UAPs and UFOs and aliens and some of the stuff that Art Bell was exploring in Coast to Coast, to take more of a deep dive into some of the I don't know, more scarier content maybe. And that ran for, I guess, in the late 90s, somewhere in the early 2000s, ran somewhere between 5 and 10 years, something like that. So that was the referencing point, because like I had no idea that Art Bell was on any other shows other than Coast to Coast, but I guess it was just an exclusive to Sundays for about 3 hours. So that's where Dreamland came from. So maybe at some point Dreamland is so we can explore. I'm curious, but for now we got more than enough content from Coast to Coast.
Yeah.
And also give a shout out to Tom King as well. That was his channel where that video came from. You could see there was like a watermark that said Tom King in the lower right hand. We'll also include in the comments a link to Tom King's site so you can see, because he has a lot of Art Bell stuff and various other UAP, UFO related media. And so I want to make sure we give credit to him, because he has helped kind of encapsulate these moments through his YouTube channel. So shout out to Tom King.
Yeah, I ran across some information that had to do with Tom King. He's got cameras set up all over the roof of his house. He's constantly filming the skies ever since this night. He had footage of the 10 p.m. lights that evening that he was part of some other, little production. They were trying to talk about the Phoenix lights, but yeah, Tom King, I'd heard that name before.
Yeah, I think it's good too if we give credit to the people who are also out there making it happen in this similar world in which we're exploring.
Yeah, and credit to you, Pat, bringing back the Edward R. Murrow School of Communication vibes, piecing together the most important storylines here. So yeah, nice flow of stories tonight. Appreciate it.
Oh yeah, for sure. That was the hard part, because I was like, how can I try to synthesize this down a little bit, but at the same time not shortchange you on the story. But it was tough. Like I started out way longer. I want to say I was close to an hour worth of media at one point. And so I was out there hacking away, trying to figure out, what little moments can we take out to still keep the story intact, but not get into the weeds too much. But there's just so much good material. That's the challenge with Art Bell when you get in those long shows. There's just so much to cover. So I'm glad that in a way we're able to bring this back out to maybe a new audience that wasn't familiar. I think about what we did with Mel's Hole. There's a ton of material out there, but a lot of those videos were older. And so I think we also hit at the right time with Mel's Hole to be able to maybe bring it to some people that had forgotten about it.
Yeah. Way to go, Pat. Good job.
Yeah, nice job, Pat. Thank you.
Well, I got to say, this has been an interesting one. I like how we're able to kind of pass the baton around and we explore different stories and see where they take us. Because, I feel like these journalistic styles of exploration are alive and well in each of us.
Yeah, and each week as we look at the process of how much fun this is, first of all, but what can we do better each week?
Oh yeah, no,
I don't know. What should we call it? What would you call an excursion? Because there's some folks in the comments that want to go talk to the people of Ellensburg. What would you call a field trip in college? Because I'm like, we should call these field trips, and maybe, but that's elementary, high school, middle school level.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a couple of professors, they just called them field trips.
We can go with field trip, and that's fine. I'm ready for I can't wait for the first field trip. We need to invest in a good camera and then a few microphones. I think we're ready to go. That's all we need.
Well, I had a geology professor that was talking about wanting to take a trip to Dry Falls, Washington. And that's a place that's near and dear to Crooks's heart, is Dry Falls.
I've heard about Dry Falls. I've never been there.
Yeah, I visited it. what is it, Pat? Potentially, well,
it's not that
Washington
far
State-
away from where we grew up. but-
No, it's close to where we grew up, but it's not that far from Ellensburg. So we got, on one hand, potentially the deepest hole on Earth with Mel, and just up the road, we got Dry Falls, potentially the biggest waterfall that ever existed.
larger than Niagara Falls.
That's what they
Yeah.
say.
Prehistoric times. So, I'm trying to think, were there dinosaurs at this point, is what they estimate that. So I don't know. It's an interesting thing. I say, the state of Washington is really a marvel when you look at its diversity. You can be on one side of the state where we're at here, and then within 10 hours, 8 to 10 hours, you are in rainforest.
Yeah.
Then you got your high desert in the middle, and all that areas. You work your way towards Ellensburg, kind of being the dead center of the state there. It's a fascinating state from a ecological diversity standpoint. Yeah, I've always kind of had those conversations. It's easy to nerd out, that's for sure. So, but thank you also for humoring me as well as we talked about Kurt Russell. Yeah, good times, man. Anything else that jumps out to you? I suppose we could start ready to wrap things up, because we're going to be over an hour, headed towards an hour and a half, I would imagine, with this one, when you consider all the media and all the talking that we've been able to weave in.
Yeah, I think it's the right time, Pat. Bring it home. That's all I got for the evening. What about you, Crooks?
I'm just thinking about what's ahead for us. Do we have any idea what we might talk about on our next show? I think we've got maybe a returning guest. Did I hear that correctly?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. We'll have to tie in remote viewing and make it relevant to understand why it's an important part of ufology. And I don't know. We've been kind of taking turns, but we also have had in the comments a couple of requests for Devil's Den, Terry Lovelace, and I can't remember the other one. It was a new one for me, so we'll have to keep those in mind.
Yeah, for sure. But I want to give a shout out to Kristen, one of our first friends of the show.
Oh yeah.
So there may be an appearance from her here down the road. So always excited to revisit that. And I think at some point we need to have Eric the lawyer and Uncle Don come back as well.
They're rearing ready to go.
Okay. I figure we're not going to have any shortage of appearances. At some point it would be fun to explore guests that we've had a chance to, meet through the suggestions of the comment sections or any of that. If there's any, that's another thing we should say too. For the people who want to comment, is there a guest that you would like to see us pursue? We would be interested in knowing what that is. It's on my list, but I would love to have Peter Davenport on our show at some point, because we've had a chance to talk about him quite a bit and have featured him a few times, especially with his work with Art Bell. It'd only be fitting if we could get him as a guest on the show at some point, because he's still very active in the world. Yeah,
we need to make that happen. Let's talk about it. Send us home, Pat, and then we'll brainstorm afterwards so we can make these things come to fruition.
That sounds like a plan. All right. Well, Phoenix Lights was the topic of today's exploration, and we had a chance to look at a few different pieces of media. Art Bell and Peter Davenport being the centerpieces of this. Had a chance to visit a History Channel piece, did a great job of summarizing things. Then to be able to get into some eyewitness accounts, as well as on the night where Peter Davenport and Art Bell were essentially reporting live the night of, and then to have 9 years later to be able to revisit that again with some witnesses, some very credible witnesses. So tie that all together, and then Kurt Russell making an appearance, flying an airplane outside of Sky Harbor and being witness to that as well, which would have been the 8:30 one, not the 10 o'clock one where they talked to flares. So that is a great way to summon things up. But gentlemen, it's been a pleasure as always. And ETU Crew representing. We'll see you at Lesson 11.
shoot.